I've been told that a naturalistic worldview, commonly referred to as atheism, takes as much faith as a supernatural one, and I must respectfully disagree. A naturalistic worldview relies on things that we can all observe, and a supernatural worldview requires belief without such evidence. What I will concede is that every human being must, in order to live sanely, assume a few things. Individual people will assume different things, but we are at our core imperfect subjective creatures who must take some things for granted. Think of how absurd life would be if you had to wake up every day wondering if you were in your own house, wondering if your car had been replaced with a pineapple, wondering if your wife still existed, wondering if physics still allowed airplanes to fly safely, wondering if the sun had gone nova and you were about to die. Luckily, we don't need to worry about these things that we all take for granted. The thing is, the world does work in certain ways, and we've become very adept at studying and predicting those ways. This is where the worldview question comes in. If you have a natural worldview, then none of this is really a problem. The universe works in a certain way, we're trying to figure it out, and that's that. Those with a theistic worldview have a problem, though. A theistic worldview means believing that in addition to the natural world, there's a supernatural realm as well, filled with things we don't understand, a non-physical realm that does not obey the rules of this one. In some traditions, this realm has intentional agents in it, like spirits or gods. In other traditions, the realm is a bit more mysterious or ethereal. The common theme, though, seems to be that the realm does not work in the same way that ours does. Now, most theists I've met do not seem to have any problem with our own world and how it works. It's hard to think of a theist that wonders what the sun is, or how birds fly, or whether cadmium is really a different element than helium. Most people are fairly reasonable about the natural world because they're pretty comfortable with this stuff. However, as a theist, you must make a choice. If you believe in a supernatural realm, you have to decide whether that realm ever interacts with this one, a so-called miracle. Things in this world not behaving as though they belong in this world, the spontaneous creation or destruction of matter or energy, various violations of fundamental laws. So, do miracles occur? Have they ever stumped a scientist or a skeptic? Unless, of course, you believe the physical violation was something that altered individual perception or memory so that only one person observed it. But if that were the case, what would differentiate this from a hallucination? The other option is known as the deistic worldview. In this worldview, the supernatural realm exists, but never violates our known physical laws. In some traditions, the supernatural supports the natural or created it, or in some other way, never interacts with it currently. This is an interesting supposition, but if it's true, how would we ever possibly know it? Think of the presumption it takes to acknowledge, yes, the world works in certain observable ways, nothing has ever violated these laws, but I still know that there's something more out there. The person making this assumption would acknowledge the archaeological fact that holy books were written and patched together by successive generations of primitive humans. This person would acknowledge the sociocultural fact that the only reason they even understand the concept of God is because they were taught by equally human parents, clergy, and friends. These teachers, in turn, were influenced by the same holy books and their own sets of teachers back through history ad nauseum. And yet, the person would still insist that they know something is out there. Such use of this verb, to know, completely destroys any meaning the word could possibly have. It's true that we never truly know anything for certain, it's just a word we use to mean that we suppose something with a ridiculously high level of confidence. For instance, although I know that Robert De Niro is still alive, that's not to say he didn't die of a heart attack a split second before I said that. However, to apply the verb to know to something that no one has ever observed, or could possibly ever observe, is simply nonsensical. My reasonably high confidence in the Robert De Niro proposition comes from my general knowledge that he isn't too old, doesn't work in a dangerous profession, and I check the news pretty regularly and haven't seen anything about his death. Where does your certainty come from? You absolutely do not know anything about the supernatural because you have been shown nothing that could possibly give you an inkling about it. At this point, many deists or theists will relent a bit and admit, well, okay, you're right. I don't know it per se, not in the scientific sense, but I have a really strong feeling about it. It's not something any objective science of yours can explain, I just feel it. This argument will often be made for one of two reasons. It'll either be made to demonstrate the existence of the supernatural or to falsely exempt faith from the real world. In response to this point, I'm going to paraphrase a wonderful little lesson I picked up from Sam Harris. With all due appreciation to him, let us imagine a scenario. I know for a fact that Natalie Portman is deeply in love with me. Well, okay, I guess I don't know it for a fact in the objective sense, but I can feel it. This deep metaphysical connection between us that defies physical laws, transcends science. I love her, and I can feel the deep sense of warmth and comfort radiating back from her. Your scientific explanation for this is useless. Nothing can dissuade me. Thoughts of her come unbidden to my mind, and this is evidence of her sending me her love. Now, this scenario, while moderately ridiculous and more than a little amusing, is fairly harmless. So what, you might say? I get to wake up every day with the warmth and comfort of knowing that I am loved and wanted by a beautiful person, and this sustains me and makes me feel good. Indeed, I may even improve myself or help others because of this belief. I might eat right every day and exercise to keep in shape, to look good for her. I might go out and help homeless people or teach children in an effort to show her my good nature, or just because I think that's what she would want from me. But there are two enormous problems here. The first, however good my actions might be, that doesn't make the belief they are based on any more true. A subjective feeling just does not necessarily mean objective truth in the real world. And if your intent is to convince anyone you are right, then the argument holds no weight. But number two, perhaps you're more concerned with actions rather than truth. Well, suppose I show up to Natalie Portman's front door. You can see why living on false premises can lead to difficulties. Living your life on false premises, no matter how comforting, is inappropriate because we act based on what we believe. A sociopath who doesn't believe other humans have feelings or rights, he might not be forced to harm them, but if in the course of his day he does, he certainly won't care. Likewise, someone who believes that there is something else out there, and worse yet, that they know what this something else wants, or that it wants anything at all, it just opens them up to all manner of ridiculous behavior that they feel perfectly justified in. It is the unwarranted sense of self-righteousness that I dislike most about belief in the supernatural, the casual way in which people assert things for which there is no intersubjective verifiability. Of course homosexuality is wrong. God says so. Some of the more liberal among you might say, well, I don't believe that about God. I think that person's views are disgusting. But who are you to tell this person what God wants? As far as knowing what God wants, you are in precisely the same boat as this person, and precisely the same boat as me. We know nothing. In the real world, we can all agree how fast a car is going in miles per hour, how many pages a book is, how hot a steak needs to be to cook it. But in the supernatural realm, we know nothing. We can't know anything. But there are some of us who insist so assuredly that they know something. And when we live on principles that aren't open to conversation because they're not based in a shared, intersubjective, objective reality, that's where people dig in their heels and refuse to change. As Susan B. Anthony once said, I distrust those people who know so well what God wants them to do because I notice it always coincides with their own desires. If we ever want to acknowledge each other as true equals in this human enterprise, we have to respect the idea that truth needs to be intersubjectively verified, not revealed to individuals. Otherwise, there is no noticeable difference between truth and individual delusion. Peace to everyone.